All right, I am calling to order the City of Menasha Board of Public Works meeting for the today. Clerk Aliazi, can you please take roll?
Alderman Taylor. Okay. Alderman Sevenik. Here. Alderman Langdon.
Here.
Alderman Kruger.
Here.
Alderman Tom Grady.
Here.
Alderman Ted Grady.
Here.
Alderman Rapella.
Here.
Alderman Nichols.
Here. Hey, first up on the agenda are the minutes to approve for the April 17th, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion? Alderman Langdon.
Thank you, Chairperson Kruger. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the April 17th, 2018 meeting.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a second by Alderman Ted Grady. Is there any discussion? See none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minister passed. On to discussion and action items. First up on the agenda is the intersection of Racine Street and Broad Street. Director Radomski, could you please give an explanation on what we have before us?
So we have 5 alternatives brought forth by our friends at WISDOT. Bill Schilling is here from WISDOT to explain those alternatives and what they would mean to the city. So, Bill, would you mind stepping up?
Do we have unanimous consent to hear from the DOT?
Bill Bertrand, sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
We have 5 alternatives that we looked at for Broad Street. We have been here previously, with respect to the overall project, but as we're approaching toward the final design stage, we are looking at with respect to what currently is a preferred alternative with a roundabout at Main Street on the north side of the river, how we would treat the Broad Street intersection. And given the close spacing with Main Street, our design is more of a design detail working through how we would treat that from a safety standpoint, how it would best move traffic through the intersection, how it would best accommodate pedestrians and the general downtown area. So with that, I know the 5 alternatives were included within the packet that was provided. So I was just going to briefly review those and answer any questions that anyone from the council or the Board of Public Works may have tonight. Option 1 that is included in the pack provides full access for all turning movements at Broad Street with raised curb to separate some of the turn lanes at the intersection from the through lanes. Broad Street east of Racine Street would remain one way in the eastbound direction as it currently is today. This option does have more significant real estate impact to the property at 87 Racine Street, which I know the city is looking at for development right now, which would be in the northeast corner of the Broad Street intersection and continuing up north toward First Street. There is a pedestrian crossing provided on the north leg or the north side of the intersection. There would not be an opportunity for a pedestrian crossing on the south side. And again, that would be due to the length of the crossing, limited refuge width within the median area, and there's also crossing down just to the south at Main Street. So from a safety standpoint, we would not have a pedestrian crossing on the south side. The main thing to point out with this intersection is that from a traffic operations for eastbound Broad Street, it does have a failing level of service with the option, and there's also some significant safety concerns with allowing unrestricted turn movements at the intersection with the amount of traffic moving through, the delay that's involved with some of the turning movements for the eastbound Broad Street traffic, and the tendency for a lot of those the people experiencing delay to try to perform unsafe turn maneuvers at that intersection. Option 2 is very similar to option 1. What we tried to do with option 2 was recognizing the city property at 87 Racine Street, what could be done to minimize or limit the impact on that property for future development. So we looked at, instead of a raised median, a raised curbs separating turn lanes from the through lanes. We do not have the raised curb options in the intersection, so we still provide the same turn movements, but without the more raised separation from them. We also decrease the terrace width on the east side of Racine Street, adjacent to the property at 87 Racine Street, to minimize the impact on the future development of that parcel. Without a terrace area, certainly it does create some issues for utilities, for future signs that would be placed potentially along there, for snow storage in the wintertime, but there are some trade-offs that you get when in trying to minimize impact to that parcel. Again, similar to option one, this option does have failing operations for eastbound Broad Street, and again, the same safety concerns that I mentioned for option one. So very similar between the two options. The difference, as we mentioned with that, is not having raised separation between the turn and through lanes in option two, and decreasing the terrace width to minimize impact to the adjacent property. Option three then gets into restricting some turn movements at the intersection. We would maintain the southbound left turn lane from Racine Street to eastbound Broad Street, but we restrict the northbound left turn lane from Racine Street to Broad Street. We maintain the one-way operation on Broad Street east of Racine, which is why we would provide that southbound left turn under this option. It does have certainly some benefits from raising the median and restricting some turn movements. We get a better, much better operations overall in the intersection, better safety for traffic utilizing the intersection. Any turn movements that would be eliminated with this option can be accommodated via the adjacent local street system, either on the north at First Street or on the south at the proposed roundabout that would be constructed at Main Street as part of the bridge replacement project. Similar to option one, this option does have a greater impact to the property at 87 Racine Street, again along the east side of Racine and north of Broad Street in that area. It does provide improved pedestrian crossings and improved pedestrian safety with the medians that get extended through the Broad Street intersection. Option four essentially becomes a right-in, right-out operation. So it would restrict both the northbound left turn from Racine Street onto Broad Street, as well as the southbound left turn from Racine Street onto Broad Street. In looking at this option, it would involve making Broad Street a two-way operation east of Racine. That would certainly mitigate any of the southbound left turn from Racine Street, the elimination of that left turn. Sidewalk along the east side of Broad Street would remain very close to the existing location, minimizing the impact on, again, that 87 Racine Street parcel. This option does include a 1.5-foot planting terrace, similar to what exists along that stretch today. It would be, we do recommend generally a minimum of about a 4-foot terrace, so this is less than what is desirable from that standpoint, but for a block, certainly it's something that could be looked at to minimize the impact on that development. It would create some potential challenges for snow storage within that block, but again, trade-off with the impact to the adjacent property. I did mention the raised median does restrict the turn movements, but it provides the best operation for traffic in the intersection, as well as the best safety for vehicles, for pedestrians, and for all users essentially of the intersection. And again, similar to option three, as we mentioned, restricted turn movements could be accommodated north of the intersection at First Street or south of the intersection at the new roundabout with Main Street. Option 5, which was the last intersection, or last option, and originally, this had been presented to City Council a ways back. There was only 4 options at that time. After meeting with some of the city officials, we were asked to look at a 5th option. Basically, this would provide a northbound left turn lane at the Racine Broad intersection for northbound Racine Street traffic to turn left onto Broad. It does not provide a designated left turn lane for the opposite movement, but it does involve making Broad Street two-way operation on the east side of Racine, such that there would not be a need for a designated left turn lane under this situation. So option 5, again, we looked at minimizing the terrace along the east side of Racine Street to limit impact to the 87 Racine Street parcel, again creating impact or issues for utilities, signing, and snow storage. Under this option, the thing to point out though from an operation standpoint, both for eastbound and westbound Broad Street, there's actually a failing level of service from an operational standpoint. And again, with the unrestricted turn movements, there would be some safety issues that would rise up for the potential for vehicle crashes at the intersection. So the idea with presenting them tonight would be to answer any questions that you may have, and then for vote at the next or future Board of Public Works meeting to get the opinion from the City Council or from the Board of Public Works. Our recommendation from the state standpoint and looking at these from operation safety, both for vehicles and pedestrians, for minimizing impacts to the adjacent property at 87 Racine Street, was that option 4 was the best option from our standpoint.
Alderman Langdon, but the Mayor, if you could please push Alderman Langdon's light on. It's not working again. Alderman Langdon.
Thank you, Chairperson Kruger. Mr. Bertrand, is this intersection part of the roundabout then? Is the DOT going to build that intersection, and then is it going up almost to First Street? Is the DOT in charge of that then?
Yeah, when we took on this project, what we said, and we were asked a lot of questions about the touchdown or the project limits with it, and we weren't deliberately being vague. What we said at the time was the limits would depend on the alternative that was selected. So under this option, the roundabout really brings us into the Broad Street intersection, and we need to address that with the project. So this would be included as part of the project under this alternative. It would be federal state funding similar to the remainder of the bridge replacement project.
So would that intersection then not be started until the roundabout is completed then?
We would need to look at staging overall for the project. Right now, the construction on the new bridge would start in the summer of 2020. We'd be looking at 2 years of construction out there with that. It would be likely, although not finalized yet at this point, that the roundabout in the adjacent side street, while it would apply to Anup on the south side, may not start until early 2022, when we would be finishing up, so that the completion of the bridge project would coincide with the work on the roundabouts and the Broad Street intersection.
So then looks like as of right now, then Broad Street from Racine heading east will stay a one-way street, and we have a development going in there that a one-way street, in my feeling, will be disastrous for that development that's going in there. So, okay, thank you.
Alderman Sevenik.
Thank you, Chair. With everything that's going on in the state, especially with Foxconn, you keep giving us these dates. How set are you that this bridge is going to be constructed in 2020, like you just said, or a different date?
Right now, the bridge is approved, and we have a project a program for funding for high-cost bridges This project is approved in July of 2020, which is our fiscal year 2021 for construction. So it is fully approved right now. We're essentially 2 years away, a little more than 2 years away from the contract letting. I can tell you there's a lot of work that we need to do certainly to get to the finish line, so to speak, with the final plans on it. We are hoping under our current schedule right now to start real estate acquisition for the preferred alternative in August, September timeframe of this year. We do have, and it may be more than you asked, but we do have verbal approval right now from the Federal Highway Administration in our Historic Preservation Office on the mitigation relative to the historic impact on our preferred alternative. So we've been waiting for that and working to try to get that for quite a period of time now. We have gotten the verbal approval on that. We're hoping to submit our draft environmental document within the next several weeks on that. And the approval of that environmental document would then move us into the real estate acquisition phase.
Well, those were my next two questions then, because I was going to ask, have you done real estate acquisitions at this point, which would be then no.
Correct. We have not begun the real estate acquisition process.
There have been people that told me you have, and so that hasn't been true.
Yeah.
And then also, we had a citizen member here talk about the environmental one, and that's been delayed for some time now, and you're saying in the next couple months or so.
Within the next several weeks, we hope to submit it to the Federal Highway Administration for their review and ultimately their approval. We can give a definite time frame as far as how long that review will take. They have staffing issues, and it's a thick document, certainly for them to review. So we're certainly hopeful that sometime this summer that we would have the approval on that. And then following that, we basically complete what we call our design study report in the right-of-way plat that starts the real estate acquisition phase. We recognize right now that we're on a critical path schedule, and that when there are relocations involved, as there are with the preferred alternative of businesses, we like to have up to 2 years in order to complete that. And we'll probably have about 18 months or a little more than 18 months to work through that process with the business relocations that are involved. And we have been in contact with them with the understanding as well, we haven't started the process, but we've informed them of what the process would involve when we would start that.
And then you know that the majority of this council, not quite 2/3, but has a different position with this whole bridge. And I kind of believe the community also. And obviously your job is to build the bridge, not be involved in the politics of the bridge. My concern is which is even those who are for Project J, is for us to be, as a community.
If we can please stay on the intersection and a little bit less away from the Project J and all that.
This is pretty important because otherwise I'll just.
But please keep it around the project, Alderman Taylor. Please keep it around the project.
So, if the funding for this with the state changes, and that doesn't affect you one way or another, if the state changes the law that says they will continue to pay for the maintenance and operation of this bridge and this intersection, that's the direction that we're working on yet with our legislators. And I don't know, I just feel that making a decision this evening is premature. I think you said that you're looking at maybe this reappearing one more time in the board, but what I'd like to see, Mr. Chairman, is that we do what Mrs. Taylor recommended, that we start informing the community about this, and that we hold some type of public forum so that they could see what these alternatives are. One thing of becoming council president, I promised myself what I was going to do is make sure that when these meetings are televised, that the people out there can see what we're talking about. And I wish that when we talked about these different ones, that we would have been able to bring up these so that people that watch this could understand what we're talking about. When we just start talking about curb lines and things like that, that doesn't help anybody, except for the 8 of us who are up here looking at a map. So I'd like, if we do have this on the Public Works agenda again, that we be able to bring it up on the screen so that we can discuss this. But again, I want to follow up with what I was going to say, Alderman Taylor. What Mrs. Taylor has recommended, that we inform this neighborhood. This definitely affects them. So I'm not ready to move forward as quickly, I think, as what maybe you're hoping, because I want transparency and I want the community to be able to be informed on what's being discussed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. Mr. Bertrand, appreciate the 5 different project outlines here. Doesn't the state require that within a certain area of a project that the parties are notified of that?
I'm not sure. We've had public involvement with respect to the project. We've had 2 public meetings that were open public meetings in October of 2014, as well as June of 2015. We've had a follow-up meeting with the Broad Street resident group in August of 2015 after that. We've had multiple forums or public groups where we've spoken at, including at the public library on a couple occasions, where we've had actually over 100 people that attended those meetings as well. So we have had a public involvement process. We will also, before the real estate acquisition starts, have another public involvement meeting that would show the limits of the real estate acquisition in more detail than what's been shown previously as well, with the draft right-of-way plat at that point. So.
You know, I see 5 new options here, and the community doesn't even know what impact could possibly be on their neighborhood, let alone the downtown businesses. This is our whole business district down here. And, you know, people need to be informed. We need to be transparent with these projects as much as we can. And, you know, given these timelines, but the impact of this bridge and the environmental determination was supposed to be in last fall with this project too, and we haven't seen that document yet on this project, let alone we're saying you know, there's all these timetables we got to hit with this project, and I haven't seen that document yet.
Correct, and as I just mentioned with the environmental document, that the draft we're hoping to submit within the next several weeks to the Federal Highway Administration. So.
And that was due last fall, according to your project analysis of this.
And we've been very upfront, and we've been asked about it, and with the local officials and in talking to people, yes, there have been delays in working through the historical impacts within the project corridor. So.
And you don't see any concern that our neighborhoods and our business district should be notified of these 5 options here before this body would vote on this? I certainly think a workshop is needed for this project because of the impact of the very scope of the project and the impact of the downtown business group. You know, I hear us talking about we're worried about 87 Racine Street, but Dr. Larson's property, we're going to lose that property, a professional business office group, $14,000 in taxes, but we're worried about a sub shop on the corner.
If we,
We're losing the
Alderman Taylor,
R.R.
if we can get a little bit
property.
back on the subject again. You're drifting a little bit off, but if you can concentrate on the intersection, please.
You know, public works in these projects are a very large scope. This isn't as simple as administration. These are very complex projects. I'm talking directly about the project and the impact that these properties are having on this project. In all due respect, Chairman.
Alderman Taylor, the properties involving that you have been talking about have been dealt with in previous meetings on when we were talking about the bridge.
I
What's on
understand
the
that,
agenda
yeah.
is the intersection. If we could please concentrate on the intersection, I'd appreciate it.
That's exactly what I'm doing, and the impact of these properties. They're running right over the top of these properties, Mr. Chairman, in all due respect. So what I'm saying here is we're worried about 87 Racine Street here, but let alone we have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property here that's impacting this project. So let's keep our focus broad on this and keep looking at, as this project is coming forward, what we're throwing away and what we're gaining with this project. What this does here to me is it's a bypass to downtown Menasha and the businesses with this roundabout here, past our community's entrance to the downtown. Is it that when you're traveling north on Racine Street, to make a turn onto Broad Street with, let's say, option 4, you would have to come into the roundabout and then go back to hit Broad Street? Is that correct?
There would be two options. I mean, number one, you would turn, or I shouldn't say turn, you would go through the roundabout to head down Main Street in the westbound direction. And then you would make the next right turn up to Broad Street.
But what if you're coming north on, let's say from 3rd Street towards Broad Street, you go past 1st Street and then you want to turn left onto Broad Street? How do you make that turn to get left on Broad Street?
Yeah. You go through the roundabout.
And you have to go past the intersection, come back through the roundabout, go back, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Who's talking here?
Yeah. And the roundabout has been looked at, and it would,
Do I have the floor?
yep, it will operate safely and handles that traffic adequately for that. So yeah, we have looked at making sure the roundabout would operate with that additional turning movement in there.
Okay. Again, we're going past the intersection and then have to come back to the downtown, and I just see that as a bypass.
Yeah.
So as Alderman Sevenick said, we really need to inform the public better on this, and we really need to have, again, some sort of a workshop with these options that the public can see. And I would hope that when we bring this back, that these documents can be projected onto the screen up here so the public knows what we're talking about too. Also, the impact on the pedestrians is something important with this project. And certainly I hope we take a better look at that too. Thank you.
Alderman Langdon.
Thank you, Chairperson Krieger. So, let me get this straight. We're supposed to be voting on the intersection of Racine and Broad. But you're saying it's tied into the roundabout. So we're actually going to be voting for the roundabout? Or
The roundabout is part
goes-
of Alternative J, which we have already gotten the city preference on Alternative J. So with Alternative J, there are roundabouts at Main Street on the north side as well as Anna Street on the south side. With the roundabout at Main Street, the limits of the project in tapering back down do get into the Broad Street intersection. That required us to look at how best to design Broad Street, both operations and safety.
But that has to go with the roundabout,
Correct.
so it is part of it.
Now, for the sake of the discussion in this committee, the roundabout was already voted on previously. We're talking about strictly what's on the agenda is the intersection of Racine and Broad.
Okay, I might have to come back. Thank you.
Alderman Sevenick.
I don't think you're correct. We're talking about both. We're talking about both. We're talking about a whole design here. There's 5 options here. And none has been approved. That's why we're here today to discuss which one we might like. But anyways, I don't want to get into an argument on that. I want to be very clear that, especially, I've said this before, I think DOT does probably one of the very best jobs of informing the public on what's going on. I've attended several of those meetings. They do a great job. I'm just saying, this here, there's 5 alternatives now. They haven't seen it, and I want them to have that option. And then I forgot to mention or ask you, I've noticed that in these drawings, the roundabout is somewhat out into the river a little bit. Is that a scoot, or is that how that's going to be?
That's how it's going to be.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Ted Grady.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I can ask this question. I'll ask you if I can ask this question. Because it's not about the north end of the roundabout. I'm looking on the south end, the other end. Can I ask a question on that?
On the south end of the roundabout?
On the south, we only see one roundabout here. Of course, there's one on the other end of the bridge.
No, that's not a...
Question
no.
to be asked? Okay.
No.
Thank you anyhow.
Alderman Rapala.
Oh, thank you very much, Alderman Krieger. And it's the first time I ever got to talk. All right. After looking at the 5 choices, I agree with number 4, looks outstanding. I realize for the safety factor, as far as I realize that they're not, if you're coming south on Racine, you will not be able to take that left. But it's a safety factor, so you got to go around the roundabout and then come back and go on Broad Street. A number of people have called me and mentioned that they'd like to have a 2-way Broad Street. And number 4 and 5 allow that. But with number 5, trying to cross that intersection with during the busy times of the day is going to be pretty difficult to go from East Broad Street or from West Broad Street to East Broad Street and so on, back and forth. So I really like that middle divider that's been put in. Now, my problem is it's just going to take 5 years for something like this to happen. Too bad we can't quicken the pace and figure out something as a city to make Broad Street 2 ways and make it a safe way, a safe entrance way, and that is by having that median in the middle there. You create only one option of places to go, which makes it real safe for even the most unintelligent driver. So number 4 is a good spot. Thank you very much for your hard work, and thank you, Alderman Krieger. Oh, I got to do this?
No, the big one.
Oh.
Is there any other discussion? Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Chairperson Kruger. And thank you for bringing the discussion back to the intersection.
You're welcome.
I appreciate all these examples today, and I like option 4 as well, mostly because it provides the safest passage for pedestrians. The north and the south side of the intersection both provide islands for pedestrians to stop midway in those intersections, and That's an intersection that I travel a couple of times a day. And I know that I always see pedestrians stopped there waiting to cross. Drivers don't stop for them. Sometimes they stop in the middle of the intersection, and it's always really dangerous there for pedestrians and drivers alike. And so option 4 stands out to me as the way to go at the moment. What is the timetable for this decision?
Our goal is to present it tonight, and then at the next Board of Public Works meeting to get a vote from the Board of Public Works for the decision.
So,
Josh, correct me. Yeah.
I believe he wants the decision from the Board of Public Works tonight and then the council in 2 weeks.
yes.
One thing that I was thinking about is I know that the issue with public participation has been, brought up. We could definitely hold a workshop starting at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. Next council meeting before the council, and that way the public would be able to comment before the council has to make their final decision.
and what would happen from the DOT's perspective if that were moved out 2 more weeks, saying we had a conversation about it tonight, have that public hearing, so to speak, before the next council meeting, and then make a decision at the next council meeting? How would that look for you?
Yeah, I guess at this point, I mean, time is of the essence. I mean, if that's the best that can happen, we would work with that. Any further delay, I guess, is something we certainly want to avoid if at all possible. But if that's what it would take, we can work with a 2-week delay on that.
Okay. I feel as well that there should be a way for us to notify the public and give them a chance to absorb what's about to happen here. I know that it's been a topic of conversation in the past, but now that it's about to happen, it presents a whole nother level of urgency on to both parties. So if that's an acceptable solution to the board, I need a little help from the attorney here. Would it be acceptable to bring this back to the Board of Public Works at the next meeting and schedule a public hearing of sorts for 5 p.m. on May 21st?
That's up to you. Your chair or any vice chair.
I said I will not be at the next meeting, so as long as Vice Chair Langdon feels comfortable with that meeting, that would be acceptable, yes.
I had a question.
I'm looking for Alderman Langdon. I can't see him. We're playing a game here.
Yeah, sure, okay.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to schedule, to have this appear on the next Board of Public Works agenda, and also schedule a public hearing where the options will be presented at 5 p.m. at the May 21st council meeting.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Alderman Tom Grady. Is there any discussion on the motion? Alderman Taylor?
Well, I don't know if, on the motion, to
On the
have
motion.
this, I was hoping we could have further discussion before that, but I got to think if this is, okay, I talked to our Department of Public Works Director today about the timetable here. And he said, up to about July, we have to work on this. And now I'm hearing that it's against the wall again where we have to go with this. And I was proactive about calling Josh today and asking him about this, and he said we have till July. So, you know, this fast tracking things isn't good when it's we're dealing with businesses' livelihood here. So I'm hearing two different timetables here.
Director Radomski, could you please address this?
The DOT would have the final timetable. You know, I was estimating based on the dates that their environmental document was due and when they would start real estate acquisition. I did not have exact dates as far as when the intersection design is, you know, due. However, they would have a better idea, as this is a DOT project.
Is that a July, as I was told today?
All right, so with a 2-week delay in getting the decision, we can make that work. Waiting until July to get an answer on Broad Street would push us back farther than we would need in order to deliver things.
So we would have the next meeting in May here and the 2 weeks of June here to work through this with our business community and with the neighborhood.
Correct. If that, it would be in 2 weeks to have the public hearing and then have the council vote at the next 2 weeks, so a month from now essentially.
And then if we needed both meetings in June, that would work for the schedule to get that in before.
Again, it would be a month. You're pushing it back another 4 weeks is what you're just saying right now, so. I said 2 weeks would be okay in that, not 4 weeks.
So 2 weeks, we go back to Public Works. 1st of June, or first meeting in June, we come back to the council. And if we need an extra week, 2 weeks there in June to work with for something, we would have that.
No, that's not what I said.
Okay. But I was told July would have been fine. I don't know why the state operates in such tight timeframes for the business community that's putting their businesses, their livelihood on the chopping block here. I can't see that with the state of Wisconsin. I don't know why we're not more generous with that.
Alderman Severnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can support the motion only if Public Works looks at putting together a community workshop on top of, you know, a public hearing's one thing where they come to a council meeting and blah, blah, and public hearings don't accomplish that much, but like we did with Main Street with the street lights, you know, citizens, business owners and that were able to come in and look at the drawings and get a better idea of what's going on. I can support that if we could do that on top of the public hearing so that they're informed and be able to have a one-on-one with you and the city.
That is what the intention is by having it at 5 p.m. They'll have an hour to take a look at the different alternatives for this project. So yeah, it would be at 5 and 5 to 6 would be the timetable. So it would be very similar to the Main Street where we'd have the options laid out and they'd be able to comment.
Okay, thank you. Oops.
Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. Josh, I hope we can, with that timetable, we can have these documents in large format for the workshop and also have them ready for the video for the television. And I would like these mailed out to the 100 and 200 block business people and the 500 block of Broad Street residents too, that they can look at these documents ahead of time. They can call the mayor's office, your office, my office, any alderman's office. So I would, just so we're extremely transparent, extremely open about this, because it is a major major project. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, clerk, could you please read back the motion that we're going to be voting on, please?
Moved by Alderman Nichols, seconded by Alderman Tom Grady, to have this item appear on the next Board of Public Works agenda and to schedule a public hearing at 5 p.m. on May 21st. May I ask for a correction? Or
Yes, you may.
would you mean a public workshop, Alderman Nichols? Alderman Grady?
Yes.
Because that's what it sounds like you're asking for. right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And that would be the motion.
All right. Seeing no other discussions, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Motion carried on roll call, 8-0.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next order, we have the street use application for the Cut and Run Loop the Lake, the Little Lake grand opening. Is there a motion? Alderman Langdon.
Motion for the street use application for the Cut and Run Loop the Lake grand opening on Saturday, June 23rd, 2018, 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. for the city of Menasha.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Sevenick. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we take a roll call vote, please?
Motion carried on roll call, 8-0.
Up now is the street use application for Community First Parade of Lights on Tuesday, July 3rd, 2018. Do we have a motion? Alderman Langdon.
Thank you. I'll make a motion for the street use application for Community Fest Parade of Lights on Tuesday, July 3rd, 2018, from 9 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. in the cities of Neenah and Menasha.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Sevenick. Is there any discussion? Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. Director, I have a question for Director Tunkey.
He's here.
Oh, that's the mayor.
He's here. You make the decision.
Is the mayor coming back?
Ask the question, maybe one of us can answer it.
Each year, we rotate the starting of the electric street parade. We start in Menasha one year, we start in Neenah the next year, and we rotate it back and forth. Last 2 or 3 years now, it starts in Neenah, and it hasn't started in Menasha. A lot of parents with small children, because it doesn't get here until almost 10 o'clock. So it's nice that we rotate that each year, but we haven't, and I was just wondering if we've stopped that rotation. That's always been.
You should ask Brian that.
But I'll get that answer later. Okay, we'll approve the application. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, could we take a roll call vote, please?
Motion carried on roll call, 8-0.
Moving right along, we're on to the street use application for the Auto Grunski Runski on Saturday, August 11th, 2018. Is there a motion? Alderman Langdon.
Thank you. Make the motion for the street use application for the Auto Grunski Runski on Saturday, August 11th, 2018, 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. in the city of Menasha.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Sevenick. Are there any questions? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Motion carried on roll call, 8-0.
Moving on, we have the street use. Okay, I think we're back up and running again. Okay, we're on to the street use application for Race the Lake, Sunday, August 26, 2018. Is there a motion? Alderman Langdon.
Thank you. Make the motion for the street use application for Race Lake, Sunday, August 26, 2018, from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and that's for the Do Try Run Foundation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Sevenick. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Motion carried on roll call 8-0.
Now we're up to the street use application for the Twisted Piston Scholarship Cruising on Thursday, August 16th. Is there a motion? Alderman Langdon.
Thank you. I make a motion for the street use application for the Twisted Pistons Scholarship Cruise-In, Thursday, August 16th, 2018, from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m., and that is by the Twisted Pistons, Inc.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Sevenick. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Motion carried on roll call 8-0.
Next up is the payment to Vinton Construction Company, contract unit number 2018-01 for the Main Street reconstruction project and $233,642.43, payment number 1. Alderman Langdon.
Thank you. Make a motion for the payment to Vinton Construction Company, contract unit number 2018-01 for the Main Street reconstruction for an amount of $233,642.43, and that would be payment number 1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Sevenick. Director Radomski, is there anything to add about this payment?
Nothing too much. This payment's for work done already on the Main Street project. As you know, that we already have 1 lane of concrete in with curb. The second lane of concrete is coming hopefully this week, weather permitting. And still looking good for hopeful of June 1st completion date despite the snow and the rain. However, you know, they were a couple days behind schedule, so it might get shifted a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Motion carried on roll call 8-0.
Next is the payment to Pfeiffer Brothers Construction, contract unit number 2017-04 for the Fox River Loop the Lake Bridge crossing for $30,803.24. Is there a motion? Alderman Langdon.
Thank you. Make a motion for the payment to Pfeiffer Brothers Construction Company, contract unit number 2017-04 for the Fox River Loop the Lake Bridge crossings in the amount of $30,803.24. That would be payment number 6.
We have a motion and a second by Alderman Sevenick. Director Radomski, anything to report on this one?
Project's going along very well, ahead of schedule. Just waiting on a couple of things for the canopy, still waiting on a couple of parts that the contractor will need, but they should start work shortly on the canopy.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Motion carried on roll call 8-0.
Okay, next is the lead lateral program from the Menasha Utilities, and we have representatives here if they'd like to be able to come up to the podium and explain the program.
Within your packet, we talked about the last two items actually on the agenda. Is it all right if I speak to both of them at the same time?
That'd be fine.
Okay. The utility had received funding from the Safe Drinking Fund in order to help customers pay for their lead service replacement program. And at the end of last year, we had brought forward the original ordinance for the replacement of those lead services. And it was talked about at that time to bring back a program so that when those funding that we had gotten from the state runs out, that there would be something available for our customers. With the changes at the state level, the water utility now has the ability to offer a financial assistance program. One of the requirements of that program is that we need to have an ordinance in place that states the water utility can offer a program. So within the packet, there is an ordinance, and it outlines within there the statutory requirements of that program. And so that's one of the items for consideration for the Board of Public Works. Now, if there is not an amendment to the ordinance and this piece added, the water utility would have no ability to offer any kind of a program. The second piece to this is the Utility Commission had approved a revolving loan program at their last commission meeting. So we would be filing with our Public Service Commission an application for them to approve that program as well. We would do that at a 0% interest or administrative costs because our labor costs are already included in our water rates. The customers could spread those payments over 5 years, and we would be asking for a down payment of $200. Now, the second part of consideration is with our application to the Public Service Commission. They are asking if there is any other additional funding that would be utilized for this program. So we wanted to find out if the city had any interest in offering some kind of grant program or something to supplement the loan program that the utility was going to offer.
Are there any questions or discussion? Alderman Nichols.
To clarify what I just heard, as part of your submittal to the Public Service Commission, you would require a change in the ordinance, and you are also inquiring as to whether or not the city would like to contribute funds to a program.
That is correct.
Okay. I don't think that we are ready to make that decision this evening, and I am not comfortable voting on an ordinance this evening either. And to provide the rest of you with a bit of history, I've been involved in this process from the very first ordinance that was brought forward and defeated by a tie vote because of some concerns that were brought forward by myself and other aldermen. And as a result of that, a working group had been formed that had members of the utility, or had representatives from the utility, from the city. Our public health director was there, and two aldermen, myself and Alderman Collier, former Alderman Collier, who worked together to put forward the ordinance that was before us last November, maybe, that eventually passed. And in that discussion, I understood that, and I think some of you will share that understanding, that the intention was to come back with a program that maintained the level of commitment of 95% coverage for these replacements. And I understood at that point that there was also legislation being worked on at the state level, and we now have the results of that. And through our communications, perhaps I misunderstood, but I thought that after your initial meeting with the PSC that we would then, that the working group would then get together again based on what you learned from that initial meeting with the PSC to work together towards what I thought would be a joint recommendation to both the Utility Commission and the City Council in an effort to get that 95% or at least come very close. So I feel like there's still work to be done on this, and I think there's time to get that work done in the next few months. I would very much appreciate a coordinated effort on this issue, and I hope that we can work together and present a joint resolution, so to speak, to this issue that addresses the funding level available to residents to help solve this problem. So I personally am not comfortable moving forward with an ordinance this evening and hope that we can continue the work that has been started and bring that back to the council.
Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. I know at different times we've had different funding. This has been kind of a, if you were, very awkward. First, we're going to pay, then we're not going to pay, and then now we're here. If you could tell the public here that'll be watching this, for instance, when there's a mandatory street or there's a street reconstruction project, then at that point, it's a mandatory replacement. Is that correct?
Currently, the ordinance states that when we would replace our portion of the lead service with a main replacement, that the customer would be responsible for replacing their portion as well.
Okay. And currently, for instance, we're doing Broad Street 500 block right now, but after this project's done in June here or July, we're going to open up the 300 and 400 block of Broad Street for a complete, for water main sewer replacement and a total reconstruction next year of those blocks. Is that money secured for those blocks at this time for that mandatory replacement from this grant that we had a few months ago?
We had received $500,000 from
Yes.
safe drinking funding. Now, over half of that is utilized, and it is on a first come, first served basis.
Okay.
We've gotten about 115 people that have taken advantage, and we think about 200 could. So, I mean, it really is a matter of those customers that we've replaced our portion earlier in the years. They're also eligible for the program, so I don't know if that funding will still be left next year.
Well, it would be this year for the 300 and 400.
Well, if all of the customers this year can still get the funding, or if it would continue beyond this year. It's truly driven on who would submit for reimbursement for that.
But I guess what I'm looking at here, for the sake of the public, is the 300 and 400 block of Broad Street it's going to be completely reconstructed. Okay, and this year we're going to do the water mains and sewer, I believe, and then next year a total reconstruction on it, which is our project. But doing it this year with the water main and the sewer lines, is that money set aside for that project?
Those customers would get the funding from Safe Drinking, yes.
Yes, okay. And that money's going to be locked in then for that project. Thank you.
Alderman Stefanik.
Okay. So you'll get a water main.
Yes.
Water. Anyways, I agree with Alderman Nichols. I don't think we can really act or make a recommendation at this point. I like the idea of having a committee again put together to address some of the bigger issues on this, and if she would be willing to be on that committee again, that would be great. And Mayor, find another person, and I think work with the utility and bring something back. Yeah, because Arnie's not here, so you'd have to find someone else.
Just for clarification,
Okay.
we did not have a committee. It was a group of staff and a couple of interested people. It wasn't an official
Okay,
committee.
well, it doesn't, all right, sorry I used the word committee. Boy, that word's
I just
dangerous
don't,
around here.
I just
lately.
don't want to end up having to do minutes and agendas and all that kind of stuff
Well,
to
I-
explore things.
Then I would like to do what Alderman Nichols recommended, in that we, before we make any recommendation, we do a little more exploring. Okay?
So is it the will of the, Alderman Nichols?
I don't know if I can get her next.
I'm sorry, Alderman Ted Grady.
Yeah. With that recommendation, Council President Severnick, with this, I've got to ask Melanie, if we did delay or do something with the options, would that affect any of this funding? Is there a timetable on your end that you need a decision tonight or next council meeting on this to go forward? So the grant money's there?
The grant money we have, so it doesn't change that $500,000 is ours to spend. What this impacts is the customers, when that $500,000 is gone, right now, there is no program in place for them. There's no loan program, there's nothing for them. So we were trying to get something in place so that once that is gone, they could have a loan or a grant of some form to help pay for that lead service replacement. In our process, in order to get the Public Service Commission approval, I had kind of outlined the timetable, and their time frame is 90 to 180 days. So we were just trying to get all those pieces in place so that hopefully we don't run out by the end of this year, but then we'd have something for our customers.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Nichols.
Thank you. If that working group were to continue at the request of the Board of Public Works, then I also think it's important for that group to know what you want to know or what you would like to see as a result of the process, so that we have some ideas to work with or work towards in that event.
Were you asking a question?
If there was anything that the
okay.
members wanted to share.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're looking at me. I was going to- Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. Looking at the bigger picture, and all of you will be put in this position, and I think that these dollars, when we get them from the state, and we've all been asked to assemble by the director, are priority projects for the community. And when those projects move up to that point and we have to replace the water lines on those streets, I think those dollars should be locked in at that point. Those, whatever, it keeps changing, as the director said here, throughout the year. First we get this amount, then we might not get it, then we might get more amounts. So I think our public works projects and the mandatory replacement, those dollars should be secured for those replacements for our citizens. And then we can do the other ones along the way, but our priority projects with the mandatory those dollars should be locked in for all of our projects. Thank you.
Alderman Stefanik.
I don't think we made it mandatory.
The lead service is mandatory by the ordinance, but the mains are a separate manner.
Right. As,
That's what's talking water.
I can't find it. I read it before. I can't find it now, but I believe that Alderman Kruger and then myself, we offered a sunset clause in the past. And part of my reason for the sunset clause for the ordinance part was, you know, it's kind of tough to mandate telling people they have to do this. And I know some people have said, well, then that makes the council look like they weren't doing their job or whatever. But to me, it's a homeowner that has to take that responsibility. If they want fresh, clean, unleaded water coming into their home, they need to do this work. And I think Alderman Kruger and I were concerned that once the $500,000 ran out, okay, now what do we do? And I think that's what your committee needs to address. So that was one thing Alderman Nichols asked, and that's something I would request that you look at. But part of my reason for doing that was to have the utilities to continue to seek additional funding other than the $500,000 to keep moving forward, and to give you even more cause to do that, so that funding would be available, not just for some residents, but for all residents. And you know, this hit the fan a long time ago with this in the state of Michigan, which wasn't really fair in a lot of ways to that community, because we're all dealing with it. Everyone is dealing with it in a little way. We haven't gotten the bad publicity. We did our homework, and we've taken care of our means, but residents have to understand that what goes to their house and what may be in their house may still be dangerous. And they should take it upon themselves even now and not wait for the main work to be done, which I did. I mentioned it before that I put in a special filtration system in my home to take care of that. Not the little tapper thing, but a 3-level filtration system. So, but back to Alderman Nichols' point, I would like for us to get follow-up on what the utility is doing as far as additional funding in the future. Because once it comes down other streets, Harding or De Pere Street or Milwaukee Street, some of these streets that are on the docket in the future, and they're going to be told, well, you have to do this, and I think they're going to be shocked. And then they're going to be concerned, well, the people on Broad Street, they got it paid 95%. That's not fair for the rest of the community. So those were some of the things I'd like to see that non-committee take care of.
And just to clarify, when we made the motion for the sunset, it did not pass. It did fail. And it was for the exact reasons that you did state, that it was trying to work out something where one person was only paying 95, or was getting 95% of the cost covered, and then later on down the road, other people would have to cover 50% of the cost, and it wasn't fair. But yeah, that motion did fail. Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. Also, what we're looking at is each year, either the federal government or the state government comes out with these different grants. So the utility, they don't know 10 years down the road what these programs are going to bring. All they know is the money that they have now. And so there's a possibility that we should be saving all that money for the mandatory lead line replacement, water line replacement, and not doing it throughout the whole city. Maybe we need to lock that money down. So, and the reason it's mandatory is we're going to put a brand new street in, and this person says, well, you know, I can't afford it this year, I don't want it. And then 2 years later, they come out and say, oh yeah, I got the money now, dig up my new fresh pavement on the street here. And that's what we don't want to get into, is digging up these, when we do a street, is making sure everything underneath is already done. So that's the reason for the mandatory project. And I think this is big enough to be an ad hoc committee in the city, that we need to really look at this professionally and seriously and have the minutes, and maybe we need, like I said, just to lock this money down for the people that have to get it. So it's a big question, and there's a lot of unknowns too. So I think the debate is good, and we're going to have to come up with a recommendation here.
Mayor Marcus, do you have something to add?
I do. I'd like to have Melanie explain a couple of things, exactly what money we have and what money we might have in the future. I guess I'll do them one at a time, since I wrote them down and you won't have that luxury.
First of all, we received $500,000 from Safe Drinking. We have 3 years to spend that funding, or it would go back to the state. So that is why the program was created the way it was, to incentivize people to get those lead services replaced. And we were hoping that we could get about 200 lead services replaced with that funding.
So the other source of funds that we could potentially have would be water rates. We could increase rates to pay for this as well.
Correct, but there is no additional safe drinking funding that is currently available for the next funding cycle.
So we have enough to finish basically this year, and then after that, we would need to find a new source of funding if we want to continue.
Correct.
Locking the money down. The people who have control of those funds are, I guess I shouldn't leave the question for you, are the Utility Commission. And can you talk about how those decisions are made? The council doesn't have that authority?
The funding that we received from the state for the program, or
Yes.
the program moving forward?
Utility ratepayers and the money from the state.
Okay, the program that was created for the initial funding, or from the money we received from Safe Drinking, was approved by the Utility Commission. The piece that was brought before the council was then to put an ordinance in place to require the replacement of that when we did the main replacements. Now, we had, after we had met with the Public Service Commission in regards to the program moving forward, when that funding is being depleted, we brought it to our Utility Commission to see what kind of funding they would be willing to do to support this program, which was included in the packet as well. 2 different options that were laid out: maintaining the program, what kind of rate impacts that would have to our residential customers in order to support that program, and all of the costs of that program have to be borne by the residential class, because that's where the lead service lines are. So doing 40 replacements a year in those projections raised water utility rates for all of our residential customers by 2%. So when that was brought before the Utility Commission on kind of that financial impact of how much money are you willing to put on the table for a program or try to maintain a program, the commission had decided on the revolving loan program, just to try to keep water rates low.
And to be clear, the Common Council cannot say, Utility Commission, you must raise rates to fund this program. They can recommend to the commission, but they can't force that.
Correct. I mean, if you want me to bring something back to the commission, I can. However, they did approve the revolving loan program. Now, that program would only move forward if an ordinance is approved and we get Public Service Commission approval to do so.
And to be clear, I voted against the program that the commission recommended, because I believe we should continue a program similar to the current program. The other thing was the reason it's mandatory, and it has nothing to do with street construction, it has to do with water quality. If you or Adam could talk about that, parcel replacements.
In order to be eligible for the program, it has to be a 100% replacement, or you would not qualify according to the Safe Drinking rules. Going back a little bit as well, to lock down those funds, we would have never been able to use that much money because of the amount of main it would take to get 200 homes in the area. So, I mean, that really wasn't feasible. But no, definitely about the replacements, it's all about water quality. I mean, just because someone over on 5th Street has the lead service line, we believe that they should be eligible as well, and not just lock down, excuse me, lock down funds.
So can you talk about what happens when you partially replace a line and what that does to your drinking water in most cases?
Sure. Anytime you disturb a lead service line, there's chances for particulate to become loose, and it actually really elevates the lead levels in that water. Excuse me, I wish I had something to drink. No. Yeah, so we really advise not partially replacing lead service lines. You really want to make sure that the whole service line is replaced.
So it typically elevates the lead that's in your drinking water.
We've seen
when you
it,
do that.
yeah, multiply in numbers from like before changing it and then, having a second test after a disturbance. So basically, it's our regulations, our protocol that if a lead service line is leaking or if it's disturbed or busted, that we mandate that it be replaced then as well.
Thank you.
Attorney Captain?
And I would advise against any discussion about not replacing both sides. One side cannot be replaced without the replacement of the other side from a legal perspective. That's actually what happened in the other state, in Flint, yes.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask a quick question myself. If that sunset clause did take effect, if that actually did pass, and when the funds ran out, the impact to the utility would be you would not be eligible for any more grant monies when it came available. Is that correct?
The safe drinking funding didn't necessarily require an ordinance. We had the ordinance in place in order to try to utilize all the funding that we had. If the funding runs out, the ordinance is required in order for the water utility to offer any kind of a program. So part of that ordinance has to be mandatory replacement of the lead service, a full service replacement, as well as that we can offer a financial assistance program. Both of those components have to be in an ordinance in order for the water utility to have a program.
And there's no funds for this next year, you said, through the grant, but are they going to continue that program? It's just that we did not get it, or are they just ending that program in general?
They ended the program as far as I know. No, that doesn't mean they can't resurrect it in the future, but at this point, they have said there is no additional funding in the safe drinking program for the lead service replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Steve? I believe that we're not eligible for safe drinking water loans to replace mains if we don't replace the lead services at the same time, correct?
It would require full lead service replacement at that time if we borrowed to do the main replacement.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Rapala.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Krieger. Do we know the exact houses that are having these lead issues?
We have gone, like last summer, we've went door to door, and we've got into 70-some% of the homes just by going door to door to try and verify services so that we could give the most notice for our main projects. We can't guarantee we're going to get into every house, or we've even come across some homes that the only way to verify is to look next to their water meter. And it may show copper there, but when we've done the main, it was actually lead going into the house.
Okay.
It hasn't happened often, but it has come across a few of them.
Okay, next question. Who put the mains in? The mains are the ones that go down the road, right?
Correct.
Who put the mains in?
You this year?
No, 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Well, we usually contract.
Okay, so thank you. You guys put the mains in. All right, who put the pipes in from the street to the house?
Well, from the shut-off in the terrace to the water meter in the home, it's the homeowner's responsibility.
I know,
That's
but
their property.
Right, I understand that. But who installed them?
It'd be a contractor again.
Okay. The city, the utilities did not put that pipe in.
We didn't do it ourselves. No, we contracted out.
Okay, so you contracted out.
We didn't contract out. The portion from the house to the curb stop was the customer's responsibility. From the curb stop to the main was ours.
Okay. All right, and so you're replacing the main that goes down the street in many of these roads?
Yes.
Okay, but
And
then it's up
portion
to
that goes from the main to the shut-off, we also replace that.
So then it's the homeowner's responsibility to get if they want non-leaded water, to get a new pipe from their house to the main, from the street, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so We can't make it mandatory that they get this replaced.
We have an ordinance stating that if we replace our portion of the service lateral, the utilities portion, that it is mandatory for them to replace their portion. It states in the ordinance that we will not reconnect a lead service to our mains or to
I
our
agree,
side.
good move. All right. I also agree with Alderman Taylor that we shouldn't be ripping up the curb and all that type of stuff to put these pipes in. Do we have to rip up like the curb if, whenever we put we dig up the main, and then maybe they decide like 2 years later they want to get they come up with money to get the new.
At that time, since we replace from the main up to the curb stop, usually in the terrace,
Yeah.
so that's already replaced. We do that when we replace the main.
Okay.
So if they want to do their portion, say another time, they would just rip up from the curb stop to their home.
Okay.
But again, like I mentioned earlier, you really do not want to disturb a lead service line. So if it is
Correct.
lead, you want to replace the entire line at once.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get what I wanted.
Your light.
Oh, sorry.
Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. I just wanted you to introduce yourself. We had Tim Goss up here for 30 years, and everybody knows Melanie, and please introduce yourself.
I apologize. My name is Adam Smith. I'm the water utility manager.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Is there any, Alderman Sevenick?
It's, Randy, it's usually just during reconstruction, so like when you and I talked about De Pere Street. I can't talk, sorry. When that gets done, that's when you do it.
Okay.
Not randomly. Okay.
But now some people are gonna have.
Your light. Alderman Rapala.
Thank you. Oh, now I can do this. So the ones that have the money can do it right away. Suppose the people don't have the money right away. And,
Only when we're doing streets,
okay,
when they're putting in the mains.
correct. They can get a grant. But if that grant runs out, you may have some homeowner that doesn't have the funds to, on De Pere Street, who doesn't have the funds to put the new piping in. What do we do then? Since I know Adam says we don't disturb that, so don't they get water then? Or,
Oh, no. Well, I'll answer, if I could,
sure.
Alderman. That's what this whole process is right now, because the grant funding will run out.
Right.
And they're trying to replace it. And the utilities right now is offering to finance a portion of it for 5 years. And, but that only covers, I think, like 50% of it or something like that, and they're finding out, and that's what us as a council has to determine, is whether or not we are going to do something on our end to help out with the rest of the cost of that replacement for the homeowners.
Well, the Utility Commission approved a revolving loan program, so the utility would borrow the customer the funds for that replacement. We were just asking for a $200 payment, and then they would have that charge added to their utility bill over the next 5 years, was what the commission was looking at doing once the funding ran out.
Yeah. Seeing no other discussions, item 10 is the ordinance amending, and we can take no action or we can table it. It's, Alderman Sevenick.
I say we take no action in that we form either a ad hoc committee or that any interested party that wants to work with the mayor and the utilities on this, put something together like they did before.
All right. All right. Everybody's okay with no action?
Yep.
Okay.
If there's no further business,
There's no further business.
I'll move that we adjourn.
We have motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
Broadcasts of the City of Menasha Administration Committee, Board of Public Works, and Common Council meetings are produced by University Studios of the University of Wisconsin-Fox Valley. Menasha residents and interested parties can obtain information about these meetings and meeting agendas from the city website, www.cityofmenasha-wi.gov. Expression of opinions regarding City of Menasha issues or about these broadcasts can be made by contacting the mayor's office, 920-967-5117. Contacting their city alderman. Contact information appears on the website. Completing the electronic feedback form on the website. All public portions of the meetings are recorded in entirety and are not edited for playback.